Hello, my name's Emily Jeremiah and I'm Professor of Contemporary Literature and Gender Studies here at Royal Holloway. I teach on the German Studies programme as well as on the CLC, Comparative Literature and Culture programme, and I also teach Translation Studies. Andorra is a 1961 play written by Max Frisch, the Swiss playwright, and it's one of his most popular and best known plays. It concerns a young man called Andri, who's been brought up by der Lehrer, the teacher, and die Mutter, the mother, alongside their daughter Barblin in a fictional place called Andorra, which bears no relation to the real Andorra. So the teacher says he's rescued Andri, who is Jewish, from die Schwarzen, the neighbouring blacks. Andri has died, and the play gives an account of how his death came about. It is composed of 12 Bilder, pictures rather than scenes, as in classical theatre, and in between these Bilder, or pictures, are Vordergrundszenen, foreground scenes, where each character in turn steps forward and gives an account of their responsibility in Andri's death. But all of them deny responsibility apart from der Pater, the priest. So all the townspeople attempt to justify and explain their involvement in Andri's death, and only the Pater admits any kind of responsibility for it. The play engages then with themes of otherness and violence. For example, the Senora who comes to the town is treated with suspicion because she's foreign. It emerges that the Senora is in fact Andri's real mother, and she's killed when a stone is thrown at her. Der Wirt, the landlord, claims that it was Andri who killed her. So the blacks invade Andorra and put on a kind of show trial to identify and punish Andri's killer. Despite the attempt of Barblin and die Mutter to disrupt the proceedings, the townspeople go along with them, and Andri is killed by soldiers. Afterwards, the teacher hangs himself and Barblin goes mad. The play shares features with epic theatre, which was a form of theatre popularised by Bertolt Brecht in the early 20th century. In epic theatre, the audience is stimulated to reflect and consider the actions that are taking place on the stage in front of them, rather than getting sucked in by them and becoming absorbed by the plot. So Frisch uses Verfremdungseffekte, alienation effects throughout the play. The characters, for the most part, don't have names. They're not fully rounded characters that possess psychological traits. Rather, they're flat. They're representatives of a particular profession, such as der Wirt, the landlord, or the doctor, der Doktor. Tension in the play is also muted. The two biggest reveals come quite early on, so we find out that something bad has happened to Andri, and we also find out that he is the teacher's real son. So the play is a study of hypocrisy. The motif of whitewashing at the start and the end of the play point this up. Identity is also a key theme. Frisch in fact wrote a novel called Stiller, I'm Not Stiller, that was the published title, which deals insistently with the question of identity and the problem of the self. In the play, Andri becomes what he's assumed to be, being unable to define himself outside of others' definitions and assumptions. Max Frisch said in an interview, "Jeder Mensch ist verpflichtet, jeden seiner Mitmenschen ohne Vorurteil zu betrachten. Everyone is obliged to consider his or her fellow human beings without prejudice." Another theme of the play is cowardice. The townspeople fail to stand up to the blacks, and the play in general reflects on the inadequacy and the fallibility of human nature. Frisch himself said that he didn't want any kind of ray of hope at the end of his play. Rather, he wanted a bleak kind of cry of horror at what human beings are capable of doing to each other. Now, the play was received with interest and enthusiasm upon its first performance in Zurich. Swiss critics and the public saw in the play a kind of allegory of Switzerland. The play deals with hypocrisy and anti-Semitism. The German reception drew links to National Socialism and saw Andorra as a kind of study of Germany under National Socialism, with the show trial being likened to concentration camps. Some saw this as successful and productive, others saw it as problematic. Andri, after all, is not really Jewish, so what does that do to our reading of the play? Does it muffle the message or the moral of the play? Andorra was staged hundreds of times following the first performance in 1961, and then in the early 80s it underwent a kind of revival once again. It was also set reading in schools in Germany, so it's been a very kind of successful and widely read and performed play. According to Jürgen H. Petersen, Andorra is bis auf den heutigen Tag umstritten, controversial still today.